Hey, good evening. Welcome everybody to our show this evening. This is Spin Legal from Invictus Legal, and we are discussing tonight the topic of debt collection. So whether you're a business collecting a debt or you owe somebody money, you should know how this process operates. Spin Legal is brought to you by Peter Giblett and Angela Browne of Invictus Legal LLP. So play along, listen, understand what the process is about, because debt collection is a real thing, and people will come chasing you if you need be. All right?
Yep, it happens.
Yep,
It
it does.
happened to you.
Okay, and it could happen to you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Today it's CRA chasing everybody for CERB.
Serb debt is probably the biggest debt in Canada right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Billions are spending on it.
Yeah. Okay, so any amount of money not paid by the debtor to the creditor is called a debt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just so that everybody is aware, let's start with the definition. That's what a debt is. So, hey, Angela, I owe you 50 cents because you bought me a drink at lunchtime. Oh, that's a debt. There
Yep.
we go. Right. I know that in that situation, Angela's not going to be saying to Peter, "Hey, pay me my 50 cents, otherwise I'm going. I'm going to
That
take you
that
to
can go
court."
to multi generations too, like your heirs and their heirs and so forth.
Yeah, but most debts of that nature are kind of, you're talking there about what would call social debt, because
Yes,
it's
it's more
about,
into what I call reciprocity. Like
yeah,
sometimes you buy me drinks and
yeah,
sometimes I buy you
exactly.
drinks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that. So that's not a debt. But if my firm produces widgets and your firm buys widgets, and I produce you 10,000 widgets and give you a bill for $6,952.76, and I say to you, "Hey, pay up in 30 days, or I will add 2.4% per month," that's a debt.
Yep. And then I ignore you and I
Yeah,
continue to ignore you.
yeah. and typically, if you're a small business of that kind, you probably don't want to ignore debt for too long. Now, I know that, for example, if you were government agency and I was little small business, um and I supplied you these 10,000 widgets, you'd probably take 9 months to pay me.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah. Because
But
it has to
eventually
pass
you
through
would pay
19
me.
hands before it gets to the proper department to actually cut a check.
Yeah, yeah, and essentially, that's one of the risks of doing business with government. Government will eventually pay you, but they will, you might be bankrupt before they pay you, but you'll get paid.
Mhm. That's why
Right?
you go into contracts if you're going to be entering any kind of relationship with government. And the contracts would spell out payment dates and
Yeah.
milestone,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff, which is very
Still
important because I
doesn't
always done that during the 90s.
still doesn't ensure you get paid.
Yeah, they were pretty good back then, but it still can get kind of difficult if there wasn't a lot of agreement or if there's some extra work that you did.
Yeah. Okay, so whether you're a business collecting a debt or you owe money to somebody, you should know how this process operates, and that's why Spin Legal is discussing debt collection here today on our show.
Hmm.
Right, and here's a few reasons just for everybody. So some of the reasons for debt collection: unpaid accounts, like we were just talking about there; failure to repay a loan. So hey, I'm a bank and I just lent you $25,000 for buying a new car or something like that, and now you haven't paid me in 6 months. Um, Breach of contract. The typical thing might well be that I bought I bought a product from you and it broke. The contract was that you would service the product, but no, you haven't done any of that. It broke, right? And I can't use the product. So it's about money owed, and that's the blunt. That's what it's about at the bottom line.
Yeah, and that's about money. Because what courts are about nowadays, they don't give anybody justice these days. Hey, everybody says we want access to justice. The courts are very rare in actually issuing justice to anybody. What they do is they issue money damages to
Yeah.
people who are pleading their case before a court and they win their case. It's almost always money damages. Sometimes there's some remedies in equity, like say if you're looking for custody of children or something, or if you're looking to be able to rebuild or to access a permit for some kind of business or construction, there are avenues to go through for that where such equitable remedies could be issued.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about today is just the usual thing. You know, like CRA might be after you for taxes owed since 4 BC. Might be after you for serve accounts, or you might be have to be chased around for a student loan that you had since the 70s. Okay, so these are things that everybody is familiar with. Okay, and some of you out there who are listening to me may be very familiar to them. And
Yeah.
what we're talking about today is what they can do and what they can't. Okay,
But
what
hey,
so debt collection agency, how debt collection agencies work, and also what you can do if you find yourself at the wrong end of a debt collection agency.
and essentially, I think what you're saying, Angela, is don't be that proverbial ostrich that basically goes and head down into the sand and says, "See no evil, hear no evil."
Yeah, the three monkeys. Right? Hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. The three monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. So don't be doing that. Get legal advice and go from there.
Yep.
All right.
Because anytime that somebody sends you something and you know that you might owe them, this is something that you can't really ignore. If you want to play rabbit and try to run away, they'll eventually catch up to you.
And hey, even if let's face it, even if you've got something like credit card debts, you can negotiate them, can't you?
Yeah, yes, you can. Many debtors, when you negotiate with them, talk to them, they will listen to you and maybe they will agree to have you pay a lesser sum and put you on a payment plan that's comfortable for you,
Yeah.
that you can afford.
Yeah. So okay. So I owe $3 million in credit card debt. It's all right. It's all right, Mister Credit Card
How did that
Company.
happen? $3 million, Peter.
You
Who would
know,
loan you that much money?
well, Mr. Credit Card Company, everything's all okay. I'm just going through hard times at the moment. I'll pay you at $5 a month. Okay. Not going to happen, is it?
Nope, that's never going to be accepted. Even the courts would kind of start asking questions,
Yeah.
no matter
Um,
what your sob story is.
okay. And that's an important point. Oh, and we're joking, but it's a fairly serious issue here,
That
right? So
is, it's very important to
collecting,
understand. Like we do use humor in our applications to help people understand things. Okay? But these are serious issues when there is a debt, whether you're the one who is owed, where somebody owes you money, or whether you're a person who owes somebody else money. Okay?
yeah,
So,
and typically, I think a lot of them. We talked about credit card debts. There's a lot of other ones. It will be that I bought something from you, and you didn't provide the service. That type of thing.
mhm,
Other debts, well, and typical of that might well be the bad contractor. Could be that kind of debt as well, couldn't it?
mhm,
I bought, I'm Madam Contractor. You promised to redo my redo my living room in fuchsia and lavender, and you actually did it in purple and mauve,
mhm. Or you
right?
did it in shocking pink.
That as well. That's a possibility as well. So that's the kind of thing. Okay, so that's a kind of thing because I paid for a service that I didn't get. Right? Okay. you might well be arguing, no, he picked the paint colors. He picked the paint colors. He's the one who I told him this wasn't lavender, right? He picked the
Mhm.
paint colors, though. He actually went and bought the paint cans from Home Depot or whatever.
Mhm.
You can't blame me for it. I did a perfectly good job applying the paint to the walls, and that was
Yep.
all I was doing, right?
Mhm.
So that might be the argument that you get in that kind of thing. And
Then that
let's say,
becomes a little bit more of a breach of contract
yeah,
as opposed to just a straight up debt.
yeah.
Like, Peter, I'm giving you $5,000 so you can go get your car fixed, okay? Because your car was found on road dead somewhere, okay? Or you took your car into a garage called Fix It Again, Tony. And then they charge you $5,000 and you didn't have $5,000, so I gave you $5,000 to have the car fixed. So now you are here again, you're driving your car, everything's fine again. But somehow Peter forgot about his debt. He forgot that he owes me money. Okay? A lot of times people conveniently forget things like that.
I
Okay?
didn't I didn't owe you money. Those were not the droids you're thinking of. Type of thing. Yes,
Yeah.
and
So
the problem here is that and I'm playing the fool there quite deliberately because that does actually happen, that people like to forget the debt they have.
yeah, exactly. Particularly if you're a business and you have people who owe you money. Okay, so there could be anything. Like, you could be a dentist. I used to know a dentist that had a lot of people who owed them money. So they would
How?
send all their unpaid debts over to a collection agency. So the collection agency takes the debt. They sometimes will buy the debt, sometimes they will just collect on behalf of the collection agency. And they have different kinds of contracts with the business about how they're going to carry it out. Generally, the collection agency, they would first of all write a letter to the person who is the debtor. They would try to figure out, okay, the debtor lives here. I'm going to send them a letter. Tell them that they owe this much money to Dr. Joe Dentist or whatever, and we did 3 extractions, and we gave them a partial dental on the upper level, and this costed 5,349 cents. Okay, so these sorts of debts they would try to collect that way.
But you didn't do anything for my teeth. They all rotted away and fell out.
Yeah, and oh, my smile didn't come back. Oh.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways, I used to know this dentist. He had a lot of these types of
Well,
contracts.
I
I helped
actually
him set
wonder
up.
with a dentist how the hell he manages to build up debt. Was he a charity?
Yeah,
Because
sometimes.
hey,
Yeah,
if I'm a dentist, Angela, yeah, I can do your teeth. Um, I know, Angela, you didn't pay your bill last time.
yeah. So I can't give you
You
more
realize this
services.
time, before I can fix your teeth, you actually have to pay me $175 and half of last time's bill. That's also $79.67 before I'm going to touch your teeth today.
Yeah, that's what a lot of businesses do. They tell people, they says, well, I can't give you any more services because you already owe me $3,455.22, and I can't give you any more services because we can't be going further into debt because we're not a charity. Okay? Do we have a charitable number somewhere that I didn't know about, or did I hand out a charitable tax receipt
Um,
somewhere?
I don't think so. No, I don't think
Yeah.
so. No,
So
I
really, we
don't.
don't. So basically, a lot of times what they do is they go to a collection agency. Collection agencies are specialists out there in debt collection.
Yeah,
Most of the time, collection agencies are pretty good. They can collect what's owed, or at least most of what's owed, okay, to their clients, okay, because they use tactics. There's different tactics that they could use, okay, and sometimes it could be unpleasant because especially if you hear from them once or twice a day or they keep calling you, okay, and there's certain things though that they can do, and many times that they get away with. But if you have a collection agency that's any good, they will try to work with you. They'll try to get
Okay.
to know you, try to get to know your circumstances, and work with you.
Yeah, and that is actually an important factor because obviously, yeah, there's no disputing. It's right. I took out 8,000. I took $8,000 out my credit card, and and now I owe $8,000 to the credit card company. And yeah, I lost my job 3 months ago. So hey, I'm sorry, Mister Credit Card Company. I'm going to pay my rent before I pay the credit card.
Yep.
Right. This is sort of reality that a lot of people go through.
And
It
unfortunately,
does,
this is a very sad
yeah.
reality.
And but it doesn't get rid of the credit card debt.
Right. Credit card
Now
debt is still there.
you may be able to push it off for 6 months, a year, 3 years, or 4 years, or something like that. But ultimately, it's going to come chasing you.
Yep. Ultimately, it becomes alive again. Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point, they discovered that you moved or they discovered that you're actually working. Okay. Credit credit collection agencies have access to tools where they can find out a little bit about you. They can find out if you move, where you live. They can find out if you're working. They can find out if you have came across any specific assets. Okay. There are people who specialize also in asset um, to search assets and to locate them. Okay, which is very interesting. And
So
we can actually go online and we can find out if you own any real property. And I can also know if there's been any recent transactions on any chattels, like major chattels, like a vehicle, for example. So
so
if
if
you
I
own
just
a
went
vehicle,
if I
that
just
appears on
went
a
out
particular list.
Yeah. So if I just went out and bought myself a new Tesla at $120,000 and paid for it cash, you can find out about it.
Yep, because go online, there's a vehicle registered to you, and it's there's usually would
And
give you a vehicle information number, and then you can go in there because all it takes is just a Ministry of Transportation search about all the vehicles you own. And then
yeah,
they say, oh, suddenly a Tesla came into the picture. This guy claims he's flat broke. He claims he doesn't have a nickel to his name, but somehow he got a $120,000 Tesla. Okay, so this becomes very
and he
suspicious.
bought it for cash because it's a lot different than if I'd have bought that $120,000 Tesla, but I signed $1,000 a month payment plan.
Yep, most people buy it on some kind of financing
Yeah,
arrangement, or some people just lease it out. So there's a difference between a financing arrangement and a leasing arrangement. A leasing arrangement, you don't have an ownership interest, but you use it and for a certain fee per month,
yeah.
and the party that owns it will be
But
responsible for repairs and so
again,
forth. But on a financing arrangement, the car is yours, but you're responsible for paying that loan back.
yeah. But
Okay?
again, so long as I have that car loan, right? I bought that $120,000
Yeah.
Tesla. I'm paying $1,000 a month to RBC, and so long as I'm owing paying that money to RBC, you
Yeah.
can't come after my Tesla.
Right, absolutely. Like for example, there is a search that I can do, and I can do search under your name and possibly your birth date if I knew it, and I can find out that you own that you have that Tesla and that you're under a financing arrangement, and it has a lot of information about you. So there's a lot of different things that people know and how to find information about people. Debt collection agencies have training on how to find these particular databases and how to use them effectively. Okay. And that also helps us determine if somebody has an asset and if that asset is available for seizure. Generally, if you're on a loan or a lease, okay, it's you're pretty well either come second or last in terms of being able to get any kind of
And
security interest on it.
and then and then of course, just talking about the Tesla again. So that Tesla, yeah, I might have bought it at $120,000, but of course, I'm not paid it off once I've made 120 payments of $1,000. I'm paying it off after 8 years or something like that,
Yeah,
and then of course, once if we're 8 years down the line and my Tesla's just become free of debt, you as a
you can trade it in or you can buy
you
it
as
off.
my creditor may not necessarily want to take it anyway because it may
Yeah,
not be worth anything at that stage.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a lot of people. And there are car companies nowadays, the dealerships, where they'll actually loan, lease you or finance to you used cars. And
Yeah,
so by the time you run it into the ground, that's when your debt is being paid off.
yeah.
Okay, so
And,
now you
and,
have
and
to
I'm
find
just
another car to
thinking,
run into the ground.
And I'm just thinking about that Tesla. Well, hey, given I do 45,000 kilometers a year, maybe even 50, 60, 70,000 kilometers a year, because I love driving to Alberta, that Tesla is going to be pretty, the batteries in it are going to be pretty dead by the time the 8-year loan is paid off, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, by that time you're gonna have to replace a battery, and that's an expensive proposition from what I hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that debt agency, the debt agency is going to have to assess the stuff that
Mhm.
you've got in
Yeah.
order to pay off that loan.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, if I just bought the Tesla for cash, yes,
Mhm.
that's ripe for taking.
So these are
Right?
things that the debt agency can find out.
Yeah.
But if they're not having any luck with you, like say for instance they're not collecting, or for example, if you agreed to pay $150 a month and then you somehow conveniently forgot to pay $150 a month, and then you further and further behind, the debt collection agency can choose to go legal. Okay? They then have to notify you that they're going legal to let you know that. And then whoever is the legal representative, they have to let you know that they now have the file and they could take potentially legal action against you. As a
Yeah.
debt collector themselves, they can't go to court because unless they're also licensed as a lawyer or a paralegal.
Well,
Some law firms
yeah,
are like that.
some law firms are licensed both ways. Some debt collectors are also lawyers. Some debt collectors employ lawyers, and some lawyers have debt collectors on staff.
Yeah,
So it
exactly.
stays within Blodgett Smith and Co.
Yeah.
You know,
But even then, if that's what you're choosing to do as a law firm, you still have to follow the rules for debt collection and you have to follow the rules of the Law Society.
okay,
So these things, you're still regulated. You can't just go in and say, oh, I can do anything I want now, and threaten to do things to people that I don't have the power to do at this stage. Okay?
okay.
You
So
can only
talking
threaten to
about
take legal action. And if you take legal action, then you have some more rights if you win the case against the debtor.
Okay, so now you're talking about there are in this country there are different federal and provincial governmental laws about debt collection, and there's regulations that cover debt collection as well. So laws and regulations each have rules about how you can deal with debt collection,
And
and
these things are
essentially,
written into the legislation about what rights they have.
yeah,
Because generally, for certain types of issues, okay, there could be a collection rate of up to 50% in terms of garnishment from federal or provincial debts.
hmm
And
and
then again, they
essentially,
could be negotiated down if that presents a
yeah,
hardship. But But this is unlike regular debts where if you've gone to court and then you garnish people's wages, according to the Wages Act, it can only go up to 20%. So there's a lot of power that federal and provincial agencies have that regular debtors don't have. So this is where you have to be mindful. Like CRA doesn't seem to have to go to court for anything. They just can do a lot of things that
No. It's basically, hey, I can just put an X through you, Angela, and you're no longer, you're cancelled. That's
yeah,
the
they
way the
cancel
CRA
people.
operates, isn't
They cancel people.
it? Well, it seems that way sometimes when we look at it.
Yeah, and
Okay,
provincial
so
governments too, like overpayments, welfare, ODSP, overpayments. Same as for EI, there's overpayments. They all have regulations of their own, and they have ways of dealing with these overpayments and having them. These are enforceable. These are enforceable debts that they could collect on.
okay, I'm going to ask you a quick question before I go into the final sentence in this banner. Now, there are people out there that will help with debt restructuring, etc. People like MMP Debt. There's a couple of those that advertise on TV.
MNP, Spurgo,
Yeah.
yeah,
How
different
do
types.
they function in this regard in regards to debt collection?
These people are federally regulated under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. Okay? They have to be licensed. They're called bankruptcy and insolvency consultants. These people have to be licensed. And these are the only people that can operate, put you into a bankruptcy situation or a consumer proposal, or for a business, likewise for a Division One proposal. I think that this is complicated for talking about it on this show, but that's what these people do.
No,
But you
and
do have people out there that are not bankruptcy insolvency consultants. These people go around and says, I can help repair your credit rating, or I can help you get out of debt, and I can consolidate all your debts. These people are not regulated. Some of them are good and some of them can help you. Okay? But if you're going to do it that way through the informal sector without going through bankruptcy or consumer proposal, yeah, sometimes you can talk to a mortgage consultant or somebody who is a loan broker. They do have some regulations under FISCO, okay? And they do have somebody to answer to if they screw up on you. But be very, very careful who you speak with.
yeah,
Find out what their credentials are, if they are governed by any legislative body, and so forth. Especially if you're under significant debt and you're getting a lot of pressure from your creditors, and don't let them convince you that they can just wipe your slate clean.
yeah,
Okay, you can go under a bankruptcy, but there's very specific rules that happen once you're bankrupt. And
yeah.
there's consumer proposal, which you can possibly go under, which can save you a lot of the problems that you could encounter from bankruptcy. So there's various things that you'd have to talk to a bankruptcy and insolvency consultant about to deal
Okay.
with. There's plenty of them in the
And
phone book. Just call them up and ask them about what they would charge you and how they would charge you.
the other thing to, of course, realize there is that if you do have a debt problem, you should speak with a lawyer or paralegal.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're being sued and you're not in a position to seek bankruptcy at this time or consumer proposal, but say you owe somebody money and the credit card is coming after you for $20,000, for example, and you don't really owe a lot of other debts, but you're having a trouble budgeting these people, but the collection agencies won't leave you alone.
Yeah.
There's ways of sorting this out, and sometimes you can do that. And if they're taking you to court, the thing to do is to go to court and answer, right? And work it out.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't get into a situation where they have to chase you, because once they chase you, they will find you, and the consequences are not pleasant because they do follow you. Because if you have a
Yeah.
judgment on your record, it affects your credit rating. Because once they do that, there's a judgment on your credit rating, and that gets reported. So Equifax and other people have that. So if you want to get a car loan in the future, you may still be able to get it, but you won't get a favorable interest rate, or there's a lot of different consequences that can have. So you
Okay.
have to be really careful.
Okay. And of course, just to point out that in Ontario, it's mandatory for any collection agency to abide by the Collection and Debt Settlement Services Act.
Definitely. This was something that was put in place a little while ago because there were people popping up and saying, I could repair your credit rating, and they charge you $1,000 to fix it. Hey, when you're already $10,000 in debt, they didn't do
Yeah.
anything for your credit rating.
Yeah.
So you
And
really have to watch. Okay, so they
yeah.
passed this legislation to restrict who could help you with this. Okay?
I have a way of doing that, Angela. I'll give you this orange card, and you can just wave the orange card, and everybody will forget about your debt. That's that
Oh,
type of thing, eh? That's
yeah,
that type of thing, really, isn't it?
yeah,
You know, it doesn't actually do anything to get rid of the debt.
yeah.
Um,
Everything has to be dealt with logically, and Once they get into collection agencies are authorized under the credit reporting legislation that they could report that there's a debt there and it's being collected and it's been so long since the debt had been
Okay.
defaulted on, so forth.
Okay, so let us assume that you're being chased by a collection agency, um, and they put your rating onto Equifax or any other service similar of a similar nature, and they don't call you. They don't call you to say, "Hey, I'm collecting the debt from TPH Printing House,"
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Um, I use that, by the way, because TPH is one of our neighbours right across the street, and when I glance up, I can
Yeah,
see their logo on the side of the building,
yeah.
right? So the so essentially, what happens if they don't call up and say we've got we're collecting for on behalf of these people?
They've obviously reported the debt. Okay, so it wouldn't show up on your credit rating unless they've reported it. So basically, they probably didn't act on it. Maybe it's not big enough for the act on it for whatever for the credit count agency to have it. There are some people who tell you it's always good maybe once a year just to check your own Equifax and TransUnion to see if see what your credit rating says. Generally, if you're 680 or above, you're good in terms of the credit rating. If you get below that, then there's a lot of questions asked, and you have to try to fix that.
So
And
if
there's
I'm at
lots of
six,
ways to do that, which I don't want to get into today.
yeah. So if I'm at 683 and a half, I should do something about it.
Yeah, I would, because when you start getting to 700s and 800s, they're doing pretty good. Okay,
Okay.
because some people who are mortgage agents, they won't look at you unless you're at least 650 and above.
Yeah.
Okay, so they rate you on that. It's based on a number of things. One of them is credit utilization, or utilizing all the credit access that you have. One of it's the number of lines of credit that you have. Like if you have 15 credit cards and you're all to the max, that's bad for you. If you just had two credit cards and they're just partially utilized. So there's a number of things
Yeah.
like that. Are you paying it on time? Are you paying it in full on time? There's a number of things that your credit rating is created by. Now there's a lot of talk federally about tenants who pay their rent. They would have a right to have your rent recorded as being beneficial to your credit rating. So if you pay your rent in full and on time every month, that your
Well,
credit rating would get a boost. Hey,
and
that's a
that's
good
an
idea.
interesting.
They already do that. There's portals right now that landlords already do that for some of their tenants. So
Well, that's an interesting question because, in fact, you could be potentially a person who has a really bad credit score. You're 575 or 574, or not even making the 575. But hey, for the last 10 years, you've always paid your rent on time.
yep,
I would
and that
say
could be
that
beneficial.
probably should count.
Yeah, and that should count because that way it helps you build it. I usually advise people, I said, if you have a cell phone or something like that, put it in your name and pay it every month. Same
Yeah,
as utility payments, pay it every single month on time. That way, over time you start to build these things. And hopefully you get a landlord who's willing to register you with Front Lobby or some of these other types of landlord credit groups that will that will register your rent every month. So if you have that type of relationship, that helps the tenant build their credit rating, so that the tenant can eventually say get a car loan or something else to help you.
yeah. Okay, so what are your rights if you have a collection agency calling you? You know the typical sort of thing. Hello, Miss Brown. This is the 1300th call we've made this week, and you still do not answer us.
How about that other call when they told you that you had something personal to talk about with Mr. Peter Giblett?
Well, that's personal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I remember, yep, and They never tell themselves. Yeah, this happens sometimes. Some collection agencies will disguise themselves as having something to share with you, that's some news that want to share with you. And you call and you find out that they're digging up an old student loan from 1984 or something. And they're trying to see if they can collect it from you. Some of these, unfortunately, some of these things are beyond statute of limitations, but they'll
Or
still try
30,
to do it anyway.
yeah, or $32.96 that you owed a credit card in California in 1968,
Oh,
when
yes.
everybody owed a credit card in California.
Yep. Yeah,
That
so there's
type
a
of
lot
thing.
of that kind of thing. They can only call, like, first of all, if a collection agency gathers your account, they need to write you a letter
Okay.
at your last known address, and they need to find you, write you a letter, and tell you that they've assigned on the file and that they found that you are owed this much money to so and so, eh? From back then, and they give you a contact information. They have to give you contact information, who they are, the name of the credit agency, and the name of the agent that's handling the file. Okay, they can't be mysterious about it. They can't be calling you and saying, "Oh, this is Joe Blow. We got some news for you."
Mm.
Okay, they can't be doing that kind of stuff. They have to
But
be.
how many of those actually do that sort of thing?
There
It
are some
seems to me,
student
I
loan.
hear
Those
reports
collecting
all the
student
time.
loans do this all the time.
Yeah, I hear reports all the time about people being called up. Hey, I'm Mary from Facebook. I want to talk to you about something or other. And then once you start talking, there, no, we're your debt collection agency, and
Yeah,
you owe
you're
us
actually
$15,000.
ARO calling on behalf of whatever,
Yeah,
whatever. Oh, usually the government debts like student
yeah,
loans or whatever, they would do that, and they would try to refer you to a file number, that you need to refer to, which you need to follow up. And if you choose to follow up with them, then you could follow up with them. And what the agency is trying to do is to collect that. The best thing to do is try to collect as much from the agency that they have, if you feel that they're correct in targeting you. Okay? But many times they will target you and there is no debt owing. They might got the wrong person. Maybe they found somebody with the same name you have.
yeah.
Hey,
You're George Jones, but
yeah,
you live in Smithville
yeah,
when the George Jones they're chasing lives in Smithton.
yeah, exactly. Like I known somebody before who was called up all the time about an RBC credit card. The person who came to me and who was getting all the calls never had a credit card with the RBC.
Yeah.
Right? They had another type of
Never
credit.
even had a bank account with the RBC.
Yeah, they never dealt with them. So these things like that, you need to advise them right away. I'm not the debtor. Hey, please stop calling me. And you have a right to do that. You have a right to tell them to stop. Hey, but the debtor has to prove, and they could follow through and they could try to see if you are indeed the debtor, and they would have to come up with their own information to follow through on it. If they don't, if but if you are the person and you're trying to avoid them, they can start taking steps to follow through with the lawsuit, and
Yeah.
they have to get permission, to send this off to the legal department. Either they have their own legal department or they have somebody they work with who will take it to small claims court or whatever. So once they do
Okay.
that, then whoever they send it to, that person will send them a letter and saying, okay, you owe this much money, and this is business now, and we're ready to take this to court, and you'll owe all kinds of money, and we'll go after your heirs and
Okay.
their heirs and so forth for generations
Let's
to come.
let's take it one step further. What can you do if you are sued because of a debt that you owe somebody else? Like that student loan debt, that you owe
Yeah.
from 1984. And they come up and they sue you and they say, Angela Browne, you are served.
Okay. So you look at it, you read it, review very carefully their materials that they have attached to it. Okay. And if you don't have materials attached to it, you can call the law firm or the paralegal firm that's handling it and ask them to send everything, copies of everything in the file. You have a right to know everything they have. And then you can look at it to see whether this is something you agree with or you don't agree with. And then, but you have a short time to file a case in court. So you need to file a defense.
Yeah.
Even if you think you owe it, Or even if you think you don't owe anything or you think they're just making things up, you still have to file a defense into court. That way, at least they can they can not put you in the default and then start doing other things to make your life miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't take the letter and just throw it in your drawer and say, "Hey, to hell with them. I don't even know what this is all about."
yeah, yeah. Even if this is something you say, I don't remember a student loan. I never went to college or never went to university. I don't know what they're talking about. I dropped out of high school. So
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know what they're talking about. But still defend yourself. It's very important to defend yourself.
But
And if you don't know how to defend yourself, how to answer the claim, visit a paralegal or a lawyer to help you.
and at the end of the day, it's important that if you don't owe the money, right? Okay, so it was RBC coming to you, and you basically say, "I don't have an RBC account. I've never had an RBC account. Yes, my name is Joey Jones, but I don't, and I do live at 123 Mary Avenue, but I never lived at 47 the Heights. And hey."
Mhm.
It's not that's not my debt.
Yeah, there's various reasons why that can happen. For example, if there was a marriage or a relationship and it broke up, and then you had, like, say, maybe your spouse held a credit card, but you may have had a card holder, supplementary card holder account, that sort of thing. And then that person ran the credit card up, but you didn't know it. So things like that do happen, and you do become jointly liable in some of these situations. So you have to be very, very careful if you're claiming you didn't have that. That's why it's important to get all the information and all the facts from the
Okay,
agency that's suing you.
okay. So let's be blunt about it. Hey, Angela Browne, you've been served, right? So you've been served, right?
Okay.
And basically, yes, you do owe the creditor $10,000.
Yeah.
Now, the situation about that is that now you've got 20 days from today to actually put in a defense.
Yeah.
You owe the money, but so what's your options there?
You can put in a defense, and then, or you can do what's called, I do owe the money, but I want to have a terms hearing. Or you can propose a payment arrangement. Okay. They have room for that on those forms. You can do that. Or you could just say, I want to defend myself and go to court and seeing how I can throw myself at the judge's mercy and see what happens. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to do this, but
Please
yep.
don't.
But this is where you need to have legal advice, and your legal advisor will tell you which way is the best way to do it. Generally, if somebody came to me and they had a debt like that, and I asked them first, I said, do you believe you owe that much money? And they say, yes, I do. And I said, what were the circumstances surrounding the debt? I want to know a little bit more about it. So they lost their job, they got ill for 2 years, um, their ex their spouse left them. There was a whole bunch of things that happened, and now they don't have any money. Okay? So basically, at this time, you need to work with the person who's suing them so that at least they can get a little bit now, and then as things improve for your debtor client, that they can pay more later as time goes on. But you need to preserve the process so that the creditor does not go after other things or try to impose penalties, impose more interest, start taking legal action or seizure on garnishment or after your bank account, or putting liens on properties, or taking your car in the middle of the night, which sometimes happens. So you want to make sure that your client is protected.
Yeah.
Right? But in the
Okay.
meantime, payments are being made to the creditor at an affordable
And
level.
okay, so the creditor comes along and he says, "I will accept a payment plan, but not a penny less than $700 a month." And
Yeah,
you look at your paralegal and you go, "I don't even earn $300 a month. Where does he think I'm going to get that from?"
yeah.
Right?
That's when you go to court and ask for a terms hearing. Okay, you may be asked to submit a financial statement, where you prove how much money you make, and you might have to show bank statements, things like that, and talk about a little bit about the work you do and what your earnings are on average, or if you're in any kind of benefits or LTD insurance payments or anything like that, to show how much you get a month and what are your expenses. How much do you pay for rent or mortgage? How much do you pay for your car? How much you pay for gas? Do you have any other expenses that you're paying? Do you have any other creditors that you're paying? So what they do is you try to work it out. And hearing in a court, sometimes we can arrange something in a court where the judge says, are you able to pay $100 a month? Are you able to pay $150 a month? And eventually what happens is some kind of agreement is reached at that point, and it becomes a court order. And you could ask that nothing be enforced against the debtor, okay, as long as the debtor is paying whatever they're required to pay in that court order.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then there might be another 6-month follow-up, particularly if you are able to work, but you just aren't working at the time.
Yeah.
So say if
Okay.
you find a $150,000 a year job within 6 months, then you can go back and have it revisited. And then you talk to your creditor and say, hey, I just got a new job and now I'm making this much money and I could probably take care of the rest of it. Okay, so just contact me and how do I pay you? Okay,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So
Okay.
there's lots of ways that gets fixed.
Yeah. And exactly, so those sort of things, you then get your new $150,000 job, and once you've been at it for 2 months, maybe now's the time when you can actually cut the check for that amount of
Yeah,
money.
exactly. And these are things that the creditors do. And even if it goes all the way to a court order where we're going for judgment debtor examinations and so forth, many times the court will say, that they're going to stand it down for another 6 months or a year if it appears that the debtor really doesn't have anything. There have been cases like that. And then they would be required to submit their tax
Well,
returns and other things.
yeah. Okay. So I think we've kind of beat the debt situation to death, and it's there's a lot in relation to that. And obviously, when we look at the debts, for example, the potential, some of the reasons why may be debts, clear unpaid accounts, failure to repay loans, sometimes breaches of contract, and you even talked about their rent that may be owed,
Yeah,
for
rent
example.
arrears,
Yeah, so
landlord-tenant board, you get
yeah,
an order in the
landlord and tenant
landlord-tenant
board.
board,
Yeah, so the
and then
landlord and
the
tenant board
landlord can
gave
take
you.
it to small claims and enforce it.
Yeah, so exactly. So the landlord and tenant board gave you an order that I owe you $10,000 in back rent. Now you can go to the court and actually get
Yeah.
that enforced. Yeah,
Now it's not unheard of to hear $50,000 and
that's
$60,000
true
in
as well.
rent
That
because
is true as
tenants
well.
are going years without paying.
So I think we can kind of leave it at that point, and let's give everybody that if you need specific legal advice on any issue that we've discussed here or any other issues that you may have, then you can always call Invictus Legal LLP and at 905-688-5598, or look us up on the web at https we are invictus.legal. All right. So that's one way of getting hold of us. And the other thing that must always be put into play here is that nothing in this broadcast or any other Spin Legal show can be construed as legal advice. And if you've got any questions about specific issues, then you really should be speaking to a lawyer or paralegal. We'd say
Yes.
paralegal first, but
Yeah. We prefer people to contact a paralegal, particularly at Invictus Legal. But sometimes somebody, you can
well,
contact them. But it's very
yeah,
important that whatever we say on this show, it may not necessarily be applicable to you or may not necessarily be your best avenue. Okay? And this is why it's important to speak to a legal person and they can look at your full situation about how it applies to you and they can give you specific legal advice about your best interests. about how to go about things. So, as I said, this is our actual waiver that we have to give you because it's what we have to do when we talk about things like this on the air and to the public.
Yeah. And just for your information, down there in the comments that I just put them in is our website, which is https weareinvictus.legal. So
Brand new
if you need
website,
it,
guys. Brand
the
new
comments
website,
are
new
down there.
design.
Brand new website. Yes,
Yep. And
absolutely.
there'll be new content put over the next few weeks. So
Yep.
keep on
Yep.
coming back, and we'd like to see you.
Yep. All right.
If you'd
Well,
like to see something on our show, if you'd like to talk about us to talk about something, hey, and anything in particular, you can put it in the comment site, or you could write to us and say, can you talk about this particular issue? We'd be happy to hear what your comments are and be happy to hear about your ideas. Okay?
yep, absolutely, absolutely spot on. And if you need anything, of course, we're always free to talk to you. Numbers 905 688 5598, and I think we can leave it at that point.